All right. Well, hello and welcome. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Digital Accessibility Liaisons meeting. I'm Alejandra Dash. I'm one of your co-leads, and Kathy Marks is also here with us. She's also one of our co-leads, and we would like to get started with our meeting today. All right. So we have a couple of announcements. First of all, I want to extend a big, hearty thank you and wishing you so much success, Kathy, as you move on to your next adventure. I'll turn the floor over to you so you can talk a bit about that.
Hi, everyone. I have enjoyed this group so much. And I think that you have made such an impact at this university, um, in in small ways, in big ways. Actually, the small things, just the talking about it, just letting people know about it, has spread like wildfire, I believe, through the university. And ASU has really benefited from your volunteerism and your commitment and your optimism about making ASU digitally accessible. So I'm so honored to have worked with you all. I am retiring next month, so I'm pretty happy about that actually. Have a lot of fun plans. But I will miss you all, and this group was really the highlight, I think, of my last years here at ASU. So thank you very much for allowing me to work with all of you.
Thank you, Kathy. That was really, really touching. I'm so excited for you in your next adventure in retirement. That's going to be great. I'm also a little jealous because that'd be kind of fun to think about right now. So that's okay, though. I'm good. I'm good. Loving the job. All right. So next, the Digital Accessibility Liaison Survey. I posted this in the accessibility channel. If you have a minute, please fill it out. There's a QR code and the actual link that's on the screen. It's also, as I said, in the Slack channel. We could probably, I don't know if somebody wants to, we could probably copy it. I'm going to stop my share here and grab the link for you. Mm. Got the link. Okay, great. Back to our slideshow. Okay, next. And then the other announcement that I have is we are looking for speakers for this series. We are particularly interested in how AI intersects with accessibility and how that impacts digital accessibility specifically. So if you know of anybody who would like to come chat with our group, or if you're an expert, please send me a Slack message or talk about it in the accessibility channel. Let me know what you would like to talk about. I would love to hear more from you. And then without further ado, we would like to get started with Dr. Joseph Axel's talk. Thank you for coming again. We're so excited to have you here, Dr. Axel. We will be talking about examples of inaccessible and accessible elements in Google Docs and Microsoft Word. So what I'm going to do is I am going to stop my share
Okay.
and then turn it over to you.
And then I will share as well. Thank you so much for that, Alejandra Dash. And thank you, Kathy. First of all, congratulations. You're the first person that really introduced me to accessibility, in like the bigger world of it. So I really appreciate the influence that you've had on me. The last presentation I gave was on the Russian nesting dolls, and I feel like I'm a predecessor of you. You have instilled a lot of your knowledge and wisdom and and accessibility skills onto me. And, I'm still a work in progress, but I appreciate you. Thank you so much for leading this group and being super welcoming as well. Every accessibility liaison meeting, I just come in after class, kind of stressed out, and your voice and your manner of managing was wonderful. And so thank you. And good luck to you in I hope you have big things planned. I'm sure you do. Um,
Thank
but
you.
thank you. I appreciate you. So today, here, to be honest with you, I kind of went down the rabbit hole. My name is Joseph Axel. I'm a teacher trainer and an ESL, or English as a Second Language teacher. I'm a video developer for Arizona State University's Global Launch. We are let's say a language filtering system for students who want to matriculate into ASU. A lot of them have conditional admittance into ASU. They have to get the TOEFL waiver, basically, which is an English waiver, English language competency waiver. So students go through our course or our program, and it's very expedited. And I just had a class about 25 minutes ago, and students from Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and China and Japan and Kazakhstan and all over the world. And as I'm giving this introduction about who I am, I realize that accessibility is for everybody. It's for my students. I'm going to talk about screen readers a little bit today and show you some examples, or let you listen to some examples. And I heard students all day today in class looking at their translators or dictionary.com and pressing the speaker icon to hear the words. And I think that the world of WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 AA, really represent universal design for students, not just students, but anybody interacting with content. So I will say that I was on an accessibility project remediating our content, all of our worksheets and syllabi, diagnostics, everything. We've got hundreds and hundreds of documents. So maybe you're in the same kind of situation where you're really filtering through and remediating a lot of your documents. I was on a remediation project for about 8 weeks. We had a need for teachers in the classroom, and so I'm in the class. But this presentation is basically what I learned in that process. So I've got a lot of examples for you. I initially intended on showing examples of Microsoft Word as well, but I ended up with lots of different examples, and I think maybe looking at Microsoft Word tables and headings is somewhat comparable to Google Docs, and that they are tagged in a lot of the same ways before they're published on the web, which would translate into an HTML code. So I'm focusing on Google Documents today. And so let me get started. I'm going to keep track of time. I could be quite garrulous. So first of all, we're going to look at some accessibility tools. I think tooling, laying out like a mise en place, if you will. It's a French term for, everything in this place. I taught English at a culinary school for 8 years. So part of that comes from my experiences there, but the tool usage. So we're going to talk about some tools that we use: NVDA, non-visual desktop access, has been around for 20 some years or so. Crackle Docs is relatively new. Just to make sure that I get some of the important things out early, in case people have to run or in case they go off on tangents. I want to look at some common mistakes and common best practices, kind of a juxtaposition, not kind of, but really a juxtaposition. And then we'll look at just a few slides on colors and graphs, headings, and then what about titles? I ended up in some sort of a quagmire for some reason of like going down the rabbit hole of titles or no titles. And so we'll take a look at that. I communicated with various people and was confused by multiple sources saying different specific things. So I went to the roots. I went to ASU's IT accessibility. I went to the Web Accessibility Initiative and communicated with them. And I got some really good answers, and I hope I could give you the same answers. So here, I'm an ESL teacher, and English as a second language teacher, but in the past 3 or 4 years, I've gotten into technology reviewing new software, submitting new software through Vitra, giving presentations and workshops. And I've also been involved with accessibility for, let's say, a good 3 years. So I'm still a work in progress. So I started out this presentation with asking ChatGPT, okay, so I'm an English teacher, I'm an ESL teacher and a teacher trainer, but programming is not something that is a strength of mine. It's definitely not a forte, but it's something that I maybe have some emergent knowledge of. It's very basic though. So I asked, what are some things that, like a computer programmer, someone who knows JavaScript and HTML and coding, what are those things that person and I have in common? And with an what does a computer programmer have in common with an ESL instructor? Or what does a computer programmer know but that an ESL instructor wouldn't? And I immediately I saw words that I recognize as an ESL teacher, syntax, giving presentation skills with logic, different sort of languages in the classroom. Instead of Python, it's Arabic. Instead of JavaScript, it's Japanese, or C++ might be equated to Chinese. So I understand the nature of language and syntax, and English uses subject verb object as opposed to let's say Turkish that uses object verb subject. Biskubi almak istiyorum. Biscuits to buy, wanting am I. Kind of sounds like Yoda in a way. So I see similarities, and basically this was kind of my icebreaker for myself of, can I handle this? Communicating about the different ways that accessibility programs are tagged, or accessibility elements within a Google Docs are tagged. And the difference between HTML and metadata, because it's this background knowledge or background language that Microsoft Word and Google Docs use as opposed to HTML. And so I didn't feel as bad in looking at, am I actually, what do I have in common with a computer programmer, if anything? So let's look at the legal context. We have, as an institution that gets federal funding, if you were to look at the next slide, the DOJ, the Department of Justice, and 2 years ago, April 2024, almost 2 years ago, mandated stricter, or let's say more strict adherence to the Americans with Disabilities Act, specifically Title II, which would be any sort of government entity, a state or government entity, or state or local government, and as well Title III, which would be public accommodations, which really would be our collaborators, because ASU has a lot of third-party collaborators within the business world that are private, but actually offer some sort of public service. So we in ASU have a mandate to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title II, specifically the Web Content Accessibility Access Guidelines 2.1 AA. And if I'm incorrect with any of that language, because it's kind of a tongue twister, I implore everyone or anyone to post any comments in the chat, and even have some sort of a side discussion. I'm totally open to that. So we have a link within this slide presentation. There are multiple links on the slides themselves. So just as a note that there is a hyperlink to the ADA fact sheet. And so this is a little bit of the legal context, like what is it, why we're doing it, the Simon Sinek sort of why. And then if we look at the legal roots, and I want to spend more than 59 seconds on this, that really there are multiple roots to this WCAG 2.1 Department of Justice compliance of 2026. And it would be and this is sometimes where I get confusing, Title II of the Civil Rights 1964, which is public accommodations, and then Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, state and local governments, federally funding entities, and then public accommodations, Title III. And just for future reference, 1973 Rehabilitations Act is really where, besides the civil rights, that web access has definitive roots in the Rehabilitation Act, picked up with the 1990 Americans with Disabilities Act, strengthened with 2008's amendment of the Rehabilitation Act, or the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that's just a little bit of a background. And I think it kept it to 59 seconds. I hope it did. So for whom do we remediate? And in this case, why am I saying this? Why am I reviewing this specific slide? And I think it's because in accessibility, as I've gotten into or started to learn and to use and to communicate with others about accessibility, is that I'm learning that even though accessibility has roots in Rehabilitation Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, and WCAG standards, that there's still a great number of people that and entities that I think are not completely on board with it yet, or don't know about it, or it's completely new. And maybe I'm just projecting psychologically onto others because this has been new to me for the past several years. But the fact that I'm remediating or have been remediating curricular content leads me to believe that it's very systemic. It meaning the need for accessibility and perhaps the pervasive lack of knowledge of it. And one of the things I believe that I've gleaned or picked up or heard by maybe one or two people or read is that it's most important to focus on anything student or client facing or serving. And I had to look this up, and I had to look at the Americans with Disabilities Act in the Department of Justice in order to really verify that it's for everybody. I mean, really, it's universal design, but the law applies to not only the students or not only the client who's coming into that commercial entity, but it's for the people who would work there also, the people who have to facilitate or who have to proctor that. So it's a little bit cathartic to just say that, and it feels good to say that we remediate for everybody, not just students, but also for faculty members and anybody who would actually have to use it. What don't you have to remediate? I would say any sort of document that only you use, like anything in your like private files or collection. So the tools, again, going back to the mise en place, and I'm speaking to people who are maybe remediating right now. And this was a process that I went through perhaps this summer, starting in maybe May or June, where I said, well, I consider myself an accessibility liaison. What kind of tools do I need? If I'm a woodworker, if I'm a linguist, I've got physical tools, or, I might have translation tools, but for remediation, I feel like these are probably my top four, definitely. Having some sort of, especially with the web accessibility and definitive, let's say, need for content to be readable, if you will, for assistive technology, that JAWS or NVDA, some sort of a screen reading technology is super valuable. And I would consider this to be somewhat of an empathetic tool, and I'll explain that in just a second. Grackle Docs, I do have an honorable mention with Inkable Docs, but why am I not going to? Well, it's not that I'm not going to recommend Inkable Docs. It's that I ended up with so many examples of Grackle Doc responses and Inkable Doc responses, and in some cases, the Grackle Docs and the Inkable Docs were almost having arguments, or not arguments, but they were kind of counteracting each other's tagging. So I didn't get to the bottom of it. And so I'm not super confident about talking about that in this presentation. But I'll definitely show you how to get on Grackle Docs and what it looks like for Grackle Docs. It's a great tool. And when have I been using Grackle Docs? I use it at the very end of my remediating process. I will not let it do it for me. And I think early on, I would click on Grackle Docs and say, what am I looking at? But I eventually, like a negative correlation, the more time went on, the less I would use it throughout the process, and I would save it for the end of the process. Frame, anything associated with ASU IT accessibility, I have those links in my bookmarks, just easy access, because ASU IT accessibility has so many great resources. I use those on a regular basis. And then if you are remediating lots of content, I would say having some sort of a tracking system, and I would call that like a remediation journal. So why do I like NVDA? It's free. That's a good one. But also it's been around for a long time. So I think that's like maybe ethos in the it's a Aristotle's triangle of argumentation, where it's been around for quite a while. But what else? Why else do I like NVDA? I think it's because I learned to. I initially downloaded it onto my computer because I wanted that empathetic tool where I don't know what it's like to actually need it on a daily basis to navigate through the internet, but I want to know what it's like. I believe empathy comes from German, the German language, like and like in thinking, as opposed to sympathy, which is like having a similar or same feeling. So with this, I feel like it's an empathetic tool where I'm listening to the screen reader to see what others will hear, or to hear what others will hear as they use it and read over my content. And I got to tell you, just as kind of a qualitative summary, that just using a screen reader to read over my content has not only changed the way that I now see the content that I'm developing and communicating with students and faculty members by making it more explicit, but I'm also using it on my own, because as a video developer, I have to write scripts, and some scripts are 5 Google Docs long, several thousand words, and it really helps to have a different sort of stimulus giving me that information instead of using my occipital lobe and reading the content and sometimes getting distracted. I close my eyes and I listen to the screen reader. So if you'd like to download NVDA, it's nvaaccess.org. In downloading it is, let's see here. Downloading it itself will take maybe a couple of minutes. That's it. As I go back to the next slide here, I'm going to go to slideshow, start here. So with NVDA, one of the caveats of using a screen reader is having quick key control access to it. And the reason I say that is because the screen reader will kind of start off like a stagecoach with a bunch of horses on it that you have to get a hold of the reins, let's say. And sometimes it feels like you don't really have control over it. I know that sounds, let's say, dramatic or so, but I think I have audio sensitivities. I played the violin when I was a kid, so I could play music, really any musical instrument that I pick up and start to play. I can't read notes, but I think I have an auditory sensitivity that when I first started with NVDA, it was almost overwhelming. And we'll show you how to reduce some of that anxiety by slowing down the rate of speech. So if you do click on the hyperlink here, that you will have access to the entire document. And this document, which is the quick key access to NVDA, comes from DEC. DEC is an accessibility and technology private company out of, I believe, Virginia, and it's been around for something like the 1990s. And so it's a great reference if you do choose to go into NVDA. Now, um, so here's the thing is that if you do download NVDA, and this is what happened to me the first time I downloaded it, and it just kind of took off on my computer where it just started talking and every click it announced. And so I think one of the most helpful key control sequences would be the Control Alt N in order to open the NVDA. So Control Alt N, and it takes about, let's say, 4 or 5 seconds before it actually opens when you've downloaded it. And then so I will wait to open up a doc. I will wait to open up NVDA until I get to a document that I actually want to have read to me. And then a really valuable one as well when it kind of takes off is insert and then Q, and that will close NVDA. So the slide that I have here is basically the welcome box, and you could choose whether or not you want to start NVDA upon sign in or use cap locks as a modifier key as well, so you don't have to go through. So instead of Control Alt N, I could click on caps lock and then Alt to open up, and then N to open up NVDA. So actually, I think I have an audio example here, and I included the audio example here because I did some tests on Zoom. I recorded my own like practice runs of this, and in some of the Zoom audio, it didn't sound as good when I had the actual NVDA open, or sometimes it cut out. So you have the opportunity to click on the hyperlink to the audio itself to hear what it sounds like. And there might be some, here, let's just play it. And if you could hear it, can you click on the chat that it's audible? Or Alejandro, maybe you could say something. I want to play it and see if you could hear it.
I believe you might want to share your sound.
Oh, okay.
That might be helpful. Also, I'm curious, my
Oh,
understanding is that NVDA only works on PC. Is that correct?
that is, let's see here.
That's right.
You know what? I'm not sure. So were you able to hear that recording at all? That
No.
was not that wasn't audible. Okay. So if I
No.
go to share, and I just see share screen, entire screen, where is it? Oh, share sound. I see. It's on the right side. Okay. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's
So
very complicated.
So, you know what? That's a really good question, Alejandro. I don't know. Is anybody in the community know the answer to that question of NVDA is available on a phone as opposed to a laptop?
So I asked if it was available on Apple computers, Mac,
Oh,
and
Apple computers.
yeah,
Okay.
understanding is that it's PC only, and I just wanted to confirm that. And we have confirmation in the chat, and Kathy also confirmed it that it's PC only. So if
Oh,
you're
PC only.
Yeah, so if you're trying to download this particular app and you have an Apple computer, it may not work.
I
Okay.
have
Well, thank you for that. Yes.
I have a Mac, and what I did is put parallels. You can put VMware or parallels, anything that create a virtual machine, and then I run JAWS and NVDA on that. That works on a Mac.
Okay. So what was the name of that, Kathy, that you said that you use? You use a parallel?
There's to create a virtual machine. There's two. Well, there's more than one. There VMware. I think ASU might have that available, and parallels. Either one of those, you can use those to create a virtual machine on your Mac, and then you can run Windows from within there right on your Mac. It's pretty cool. You should
Interesting.
yeah, talk to your desk side support. They'll be able to help you with that.
Okay, great. Thank you for pointing that out. That was one thing I've learned is that there's seems to be a lot of troubleshooting with remediation, and there's a lot of like incompatibility with let's say Google Docs, or maybe not incompatibility, but not things or elements that don't completely translate from, let's say, a Google Doc to a Microsoft Word document, and then sometimes tagging gets lost from Google Docs and Microsoft Word into HTML. So thank you for identifying that this is not for Mac, and I apologize for not knowing that ahead of time. It's my lack of usage with Macintosh, but thank you for sharing that. So here's what I think is that with the recordings, because we're already at like 33 minutes, is that would it be okay if I save the recordings for your own personal listening to it? Or would you like me to go ahead and play it? What does anybody think? Maybe we'll play one of them. And so if you can't hear this one, it's gonna when I click on Control Alt N, open NVDA.
Welcome to NVDA dialog. Welcome to NVDA. Most commands
Is that audible?
NVDA require you to hold down the NVDA key
Yes,
while pressing
it
the
is.
keys.
We can hear.
By default, the insert
Okay.
and numpad insert keys may both be used as the NVDA key. Okay.
Okay, so since I didn't take into consideration that not everybody would have a desktop, that these are audio examples that you can access. Like these are not recordings that you would have to have NVDA in order to listen to them. But if you've never heard a screen reader read the content, then I would recommend clicking on the audio and listening to it. To hear, what does it sound like when you first download and start using a screen reader tool? And so with this, I will say that if you were to download NVDA or you were to have some sort of comparable screen reader, that you can slow down or you can speed up the rate of speech, which I find super helpful because the original audio on this original slide, the Welcome to NVDA, is super quick. And then the second audio shows how I'm clicking Control and Insert and the arrow down in order to reduce the rate of speech, which is super helpful. So with that is one of the tool suggestions. If anything, I would recommend that if you don't have a screen reader that whatever hardware that you have, that you try out a screen reader and maybe start to use it on a daily basis, or just with your own writing content, your own maybe Canvas messages that you write, so that you get an idea about what someone accessing a screen reader will experience. So the other tool that I've been using is Grackle Docs, and Grackle Docs is great. Especially, I think it's good for a lot of like levels of experience with accessibility, because if you don't know anything about accessibility or how to remediate, add headings, titles, and that it would be really helpful to see how elements are made accessible or remediated. So I think if you don't know anything about accessibility, Grackle Docs is great. If you have a lot of documents that you are remediating, again, I think Grackle Docs is great. And the one thing that Grackle Docs will do is it will tag tables and other elements that presumably somebody that doesn't know coding can do. So if you don't know how to like get into the background of the computer or speak the computer's language in this metadata or HTML, that Grackle Docs is great because it will tag elements for you. So how do you install Grackle Docs? I think a lot of people are using it. Let's see, I'll go to the slideshow so we can see it better. You would go to the extensions, and if you're in a Google Doc, and then add-on, go to add-ons and then click add-ons. And then you will go be taken into the Google Workspace. You click on Grackle Docs, and when you find Grackle Docs, you click on install. And then when you want to load Grackle Docs, let's say that you have a document that you want to check for accessibility, you would click on extensions. There's your Grackle Docs. I have an Inkable Docs there as well that I was using to kind of see what each one, kind of use a biangulation and see what each tool was saying about the accessibility or inaccessibility of a document. So let's see, frame, anything coming from accessibility, IT accessibility, I think is a great tool as well. Have those on maybe a bookmark. And here's a quick reference to one of the PDFs. I believe there's a hyperlink to the PDF. So another tool resource that you might want to have open. And the last tool that I recommended was to have some sort of a tracking device. And this is an example of some of the notes that I wrote on a syllabus, like a 5 or 6 page syllabus. And I found that the keeping track of having some sort of a remediation journal helped me to let's say establish more of a homogenization of the changes that I was being made, because we've got multiple levels in our department, and I started out with basic one and ended up at intermediate in the intermediate level. So I know that let's see, we've got a couple of quick tips on what to avoid abbreviations when it comes to accessibility or words. I think American Psychological Association stipulates that one should identify an acronym fully, like American Psychological Association, before you employ an acronym like APA. And in this case, even though students aren't seeing this assignment, perhaps maybe it's just for faculty communicating with each other, that these abbreviations will be literally read by a screen reader as, in this assignment, SS will work together in groups. And so that is not accessible. The accessible version of it would be to spell out words like students and minute. When it comes to colors should not be used to convey any sort of meaning or value because of people with visual disabilities, that they are unable to distinguish or discriminate between colors. And instead, one could use, if you really need to use a graph, you could use, let's say, different hues of colors and arrows pointing to specific components of that graph. However, when it comes to a graph or any sort of table or something like that, that when in doubt, spell it out, is the motto that I kind of told myself as I was remediating some content, where I said, well, I feel like I'm spending a lot of time on this. I'm changing the patterns, having some of the some of the elements of the pie chart, zigzag, others like squares to make it. But when it comes down to it, have content, have something that's spelled out. So here's some don'ts. Don't make everything normal text, but just make it larger. Use headings instead. Do not use font that is that's adorned, that has a lot of like fancy serif in it. And this is for, let's say, visual learners that are unable to detect or see like standardization within lettering, physical lettering. So Arial is definitely a go-to font. Oops. And then we have color contrasting, where, let's see here, color should not be below a 4.5 to 1. And so looking at this little message, hey everyone, let's meet in the library today. If I were to go to the, let's see, where is it? It is the don't use color contrast. WebAIM. WebAIM is a great tool to use. I think there's a link here for you as well, the hyperlink to WebAIM. And if you have some sort of a question about your about contrast, what you would do is you would go to you click on text color and the highlight color, find the hex numbers, and then input those into WebAIM, and that will tell you. So moving quickly, going into headings, here's where I really personally and maybe professionally had a lot of trouble, because I knew that being an English teacher for 25 years, in teaching composition, that I've taught my students to have different headings, but also have a title. And I ran into kind of maybe a little bit of a really implicit battle of the styles, where I believe if one were to say this document is for publishing on the web only, then in HTML, that heading one is going to be the title of the entire page. But my problem is that I was seeing examples of, let's say, the heading one was for the chapter, even though it was out of a book and that was the title. And so I needed to kind of visually encompass or visually depict what I thought I was seeing, and that was that the heading one is the title of the entire web page or the article, and then there could be multiple heading twos, or there could be just be one. Under each heading, there could be subsequent headings, and then the H4 and the H5 represent heading 4 and heading 5. And so we go from the most broad idea or concept into a more specific. And if you were to access the World Wide Web Consortium's Web Accessibility Initiative website about headings, what you'll see is that you might see an example of this where heading one is the title of the web page, but then you might see that heading one way maybe in the middle somewhere. And if I go back to the slide itself, and so what that looks like is that the title, as you can see in the HTML, the title Cooking Techniques is like the source website as opposed to the web page, and that H1 Cooking Techniques would be the title of that specific web page as opposed to the file name. And so I thought, what is the actual title? And in HTML, the title is going to be whatever the document title, whatever you save the document title as, and then for the web, it's whatever is searchable. And then the H1 is going to be the title of the web page itself. And so I think one of the things that fed into my kind of question of, do I get rid of this title format, is that I was seeing examples not only in video on YouTube, but also in multiple different accessibility sources, is that I still see as title. So if you have a title and it's formatted as title, that when you transfer that into HTML, what I'm to believe is that title, unless it's the HTML title, the file name will bump down to where if you accidentally or you title your web page with a title format, when you transfer it to HTML, it will take on a heading 1, and then whatever you have as heading 1 will nest down to heading 2. I think I'm going to skip through a couple because we have about 15 minutes. So some of these slides relate to me and my search on, do I have a title, or do I could have a title on the document itself, and I know that there's a title name for the document, but do I just skip, do I tell my students, no, you don't format a title, you format it as a heading 1, even though that's the title of your document? I felt like I was going to anticipate lots of questions from students who said, oh, I thought we have a title. And then me saying, well, you do, but you just format it as heading 1. So I think I came to some sort of an understanding and maybe a compromise as well. So I think I'm going to skip ahead through this and just show you how I actually contacted the Web Accessibility Initiative and got a response. And it was basically, we don't want to get in the middle of or we don't have a comment about it. And actually, this is from someone, and I'm not going to state their name, and I kind of blotted it out just because this person was super helpful and kind of shedding some light in that this person told me that WCAG doesn't even say that you have to have only one heading 1, but it is recommended, and some other enlightening details about title or heading. And actually received responses from a couple of different entities. And I think this is the one from the Web Accessibility Initiative where they say, well, we don't. I think what they're saying is there are different styles that will say yes, a title, and some styles that will say no title, but anything that's published to the web, that heading 1 is the title of the page itself. But if you do have a title on your document, then that will be read by a screen reader as a paragraph. With Google Docs, it'll be read as a title. It'll be reiterated, but with Microsoft Word, it'll be read as a bookmarker or a bookmark. So screen readers will read Google Docs slightly differently than Microsoft Word. So here's an example of some content with no headings, not remediated whatsoever. Here's an example of some content that looks remediated, or let's say that it looks like it has a title and it looks like it has heading 2, but everything is in normal text. So one way to remediate this, and I know that looks really busy, but it is to take that normal text and change it into a heading 1. But here's what's wrong with this document. Everything's in normal text. That 30-minute cities at the very top, commuting to campus, is a header, but screen readers often will not read the header when you normally click on read from the cursor or when it opens up automatically. This is something I didn't know. So as a caveat, or as a suggestion, reconsider whether or not you have a header in your document itself, in your document. Number 3, headings should be left aligned as opposed to right in the middle. And why is this? This is for neurodivergent learners, people with ADHD. We call it the ocean of space, where there's a lot of empty space. And underlines don't translate in screen readers. So let's look at, I'm not going to play this. Well, let's see. I think I will, since we only have about 10 minutes left, I think I will skip this part of it with the audio sample. But there is an audio sample here of what it sounds like to have a screen reader read over the content with a title and a heading 1 and subsequent heading 2s. And so I think here's the remediated Google Doc, where a Google Doc will read the title 30-minute cities commuting to campus, and it will read heading 1, instructor sustainability. And so if this were to be published via the web, transferred to HTML, that the 30-minute cities would be, I believe in most cases, bumped down to a heading 1. And then what I have as heading 1 will be bumped down to heading 2. But as long as the headings are nested in a logical order, that a screen reader will, like Greco Docs and Inkable Docs will consider this a remediated document. So if you were to, let's say, have let's say a series of documents or pages that you're going to publish under, let's say, a common theme, that it is, you could have the common theme as the title, but whatever that individual page is as a definitive heading 1. Also line spacing, heading 2s for subsequent headings under heading 1. And here is, I believe, the file heading 1. I asked ChatGPT, what happens if I use the title of 30-minute cities and the document title has 30-minute cities? And here's what I was told, that this is how it would look in HTML, where the title, that which the document is saved under, title name, has that specific HTML title, and then it lists strong, whatever my title was, where I actually have it formatted visually on the Google document as a title. It will say in HTML as a paragraph or strong, but it will still read it. It's just a reiteration of whatever the document title is, but the overall broad encompassing title of that page is going to be Instructor Sustainability McGee's Daily Bicycle Commute to Campus. So I'm sorry if like this is confusing, and maybe it just relates to my my realization that there are multiple different types of documents that have different ways of tagging and coding that as long as it's audible to a screen reader, it's accessible, and that there's some logical order, that if you accidentally put two heading ones, that it's not going to be it well the issue is that the headings are used, and on this document we have it on the left, that the headings are used to navigate, so that someone using a screen reader can click tab and it will just go from one heading to the other. And so that, I think, is probably one of the most important aspects of including headings, is that it's in a logical order, because and it's navigable. So I'm going to try to go into tables in the last like 7 minutes, and I know I'm flying through this, and I apologize for going super quickly, and I also apologize about the NVDA recommendation and taking into consideration Macintosh users, and so that's a lesson for me. So here is a table, and I think I have enough time to do this. So here we have a table, and this is something that I presented to not this table specifically, but I presented to my students today, because they're advanced one listening and speaking students, and we have a little bit of a sub-thematic unit on slang. And so here we have let's say the draft of a table. And if I go to the next slide, basically what I'm doing is I'm inserting a title row. And then basically after that, I'm going to pin this header row to the table itself, so that if the table is really long, that the table of slang terms and a word meaning an example are going to follow the table on the next page. And here we have, so basically I have tables in syllabi that I've remediated that just happen to be like nested underneath a heading 2 and maybe even a heading 3. So let's say like under the syllabus, heading 1 is course description and class expectations or something like that. And then under that heading 1, I'd have multiple heading 2s. And so with, let's say, a table depicting online tutoring times, that I might actually have my table as labeled as, let's say, a heading 3 or something like that. Depends on where it is in the document. And if I see that there is space, this is more of a stylistic thing, especially addressing the oceans of space, basically. As you can see it on the right side of the screen, you see this basically space. You go to format, line spacing, custom spacing, and I think this is one of the things that I didn't realize when I first started to input or apply headings, is that when I would apply a heading onto something, before I knew about how to really format it stylistically, that I thought that was the font that it was going to be, and I thought that was a spacing, but you could go in and change the font of a heading 1 or heading 2, change it from the default just by going to the toolbar. And so I think this is one of my learning curve moments where I thought, well, I don't really like that space, and I've got the syllabus that's 7 pages long, and I need to economize on all of my space. That if you go into the line spacing, it says that it's single space, but if you go into custom spacing, you see it's 24, and so I would change that to a 6. I think I have a duplicate slide there. I'm trying to consider the time. It's 4 minutes until. And so here we have a more remediated, let's say, labeling of a title row, a header, it's pinned. I'm looking at the content itself and taking into consideration the fact that a screen reader will read top to right to left, or left to right, top to bottom, is that it will read table of slang terms, then it will read word, meaning, example, and then go through each row. And if you, I mean, in reality, I feel like I have presented students with so many tables like this, that after using a screen reader and after using Grackle Docs, I kind of wince, saying, oh, maybe it wasn't super accessible. And so what I realized with the screen reader, because it will read each individual cell, is that I found that I needed to not just state the rudimentary one or two word definition, but I felt obligated to actually rewrite and use complete sentences for the meaning itself. And I found that I think it made more sense to me, and I think it will make more sense to my students. It'll give more context, and I think it's just overall better practice. And then again, if the table somehow is really complicated, try to format it into text and paragraph with bullet points format. Um, if I go into to the Google Docs or the Grackle Docs, uh, starting with the rough draft, the Greco docs will say that I needed some sort of a tagging, and what it'll do is it'll tag that element for me. Um, and as you could see, the tables were tagged as well, and it will give you a nice little, red rectangle to click on so that it can remediate for you. And here I've got a close up of that. And then it will have a green bar, it'll have some sort of a positive note. It'll say that 22 out of 22 checks passed, even though I don't have a title row on it with the header pinned. So with the Grackle Docs, it's tagging something that I don't know how to do. And I don't even, I think I've struggled with conceptualizing and explaining it. And I've asked professionals about it, and it's basically a language that the tagging is something that Grackle Docs specializes in doing. And I think they do that because, to be honest with you, we live in a very commercial era where things are bought and sold. Of course, I mean, I think that's the nature of capitalism. But what I found is that with Grackle Docs, with a freemium, that I was able to tag that specific row or have the remediation done. But without it, I found that, or excuse me, after a trial period, that there was kind of a push to subscribe to Grackle Docs. And I think institutionally it might be like a department, 10 people, $1,200, something like that. Don't quote me on that. But there is a cost. However, I think it would be a great tool to use if you're a big department that has tons, lots of documents. Myriad, I think Myriad, the direct translation is like 10,000, if I'm not mistaken, but we use it colloquially to mean many. The Greco Docs probably would be a really good remediating tool to use. Here's what the tag looks like. In conclusion, and I'm sorry for flying through this, let's see, click on to the next one. For any sort of discussion, I didn't really leave a lot of time, and I'm so sorry about that. But I like to just hear other people's issues with remediation and other like best practices and strategies, because again, I am a total work in progress. And with that, I thank you for your time. My nature is to be really garrulous and talkative, and if you have any, I should share that again. If you have any comments or questions, or want to share your trials and tribulations and learning curve, I would appreciate it. Or I think we would all appreciate it. We'll go into share. Let's look at the questions again.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Axel. This is incredible. I mean, a trove of important and relevant information. I'm so excited that you shared it with us. And I learned so much about this. I know how to do this, and yet I'm like, oh my God, more important nuggets. This was phenomenal. Thank you.